Unit question number 4. What were the different visions of America expressed by the Federalists and Republicans? How did these goals affect the domestic and foreign policies of the United States? So, to start with that, I guess we might need to first start with the differences between the Federalists and the Republicans, like the core thing, the main thing that set them apart. You can say that everything was derived from this. Um, Basically, what I'm trying to get at is the way they interpreted the Constitution. See, Federalists, they were very flexible with it. They were like, if it's not worded in there exactly, I think we can probably do it. If it doesn't say we can't do it, then we can probably do it. Whereas the Republicans were very strict to it. It was what the Constitution says, no matter what. And if the Constitution doesn't say we can do it, then we probably can't do it. And there's a few exceptions to that, like the Louisiana Purchase. The Constitution didn't technically say he had the right to do it, which is why he was a little iffy about it, and people are like, well, it's kind of weird that he did that because it's not what he stands for. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I noticed there was music playing, so I stopped that for you. Sorry about that. I hope it wasn't distracting. Anyway, back to the question. It says, what were the different visions of America expressed by the Federalists and Republicans? So I guess what I should do is explain what each of them had, what vision they had for the country. The Federalists envisioned a country that was based on industry, that had a strong industrial and economical system, was into making goods, and that's how we would kind of support ourselves and turn a profit. Whereas the Republican model was way more agricultural. It was, this is why, like, if you look at the breakups, Federalists were in the North, New England, where farming wasn't present and predominant, whereas Federalists were in the South, where there was a lot of farming and a lot of plantations, a lot of tobacco going on. So that was the main thing there, and that's what they wanted to keep going. That's what they wanted to continue thriving with, slavery and all that awesomeness, cotton. So how did all this affect domestic and foreign policies? Well, basically, it did in several different ways. Federalists and Republicans on foreign and domestic policies, what each one believed and who did what and what. Basically, the main issue at the time, foreign policies, I guess, would be the French Revolution, which is going on. The Republicans kind of supported the revolution. We had just gone through our own revolution, and they, saw, France kind of, as ally to us during that, so we should be an ally to them during their time of need. And so there was that. But the Federalists saw it slightly differently, where they it was kind of a scary revolution. It was very bloody and like donk. So Federalists they weren't all into that, and they just wanted to stay out of it. Basically, they just wanted to stay isolated over here in America, and if anything, they probably favored the British side a little bit. I think. Just because we were doing a lot of trade with them, and like I said, they wanted to be an industrial area. So, but I mean, we were trading with both of them. But then, later on, Britain gets all grabby with our ships, which isn't cool. So we ended up siding with the French, and blah 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 blah. But anyway, that's besides the point. Down the road, neither here nor there, as they like to say. I don't know who they is, but they like to say that. We did have a Jay Treaty that was opposed by the Republicans, but favored by the Federalists, and the Federalists were in power at the time, so of course it happened. Basically, it was a treaty with the British that said that they would take some of their troops out of like some of the western places in like the Ohio River Valley, I believe, and it was just a really nice little thing that didn't really do anything in the end. It says not only foreign but domestic policies, so I feel I must talk about the banks, the big banks, the National Bank. This was a big thing back in the day. It was kind of Hamilton's idea, Hamilton's policy, really. Basically, Hamilton really liked big banks. He should have a national bank and he was right. It worked, and it was a very good thing. Worked very well until Jackson came along and demolished it. Anyway, we had a big bank, and he believed that the he believed that we should take on the debt of the states. First of all, he also believed that we, being the national government, sorry, he also believed that we should have debt. We should have a little bit of debt. It's a healthy thing to have a little bit of debt. He believed that he was very into pleasing the rich because the rich are the ones who are going to buy bonds and keep the country going when we need money. Um, and he believed in paying those back, obviously, eventually. That's how bonds work. Uh, yeah. Whereas the Republicans, basically everything I just said, they didn't like it. They didn't want a big bank. Didn't want a national bank. Uh, they didn't like the debt thing because like New England had a lot more debt, per state than the southern states did. So they were like, "Yo, that's not really fair. You're gonna get rid of all their debt, but we don't really have much debt. But yeah, that's not cool." Something I almost forgot to mention about the big banks, the national banks. Basically, it was found to be unconstitutional by the Republicans. See, like I said earlier, the Republicans believed that if it wasn't worded exactly in the Constitution and say, hey, you can do this, then to them it was unconstitutional. And being unconstitutional, you can't do it. So for them, the big bank wasn't just a bad idea, it was illegal. Clearly, this wasn't the view of the Federalists at the time who did it. uh, and personally, if you want my opinion, which you probably don't, but I'll give it anyway, I think it was probably a good idea. I mean, it's a flexible document, I think, more than not. There's no way you can think of everything at once, so there's always going to be new things to come up, and if you don't have the right to adapt and change and overcome, uh, it's just going to become obsolete and old and crappy and not worth anything. But that said, you can't, take advantage of that, and there's got to be rules to set that back and stop them from taking advantage of it, and it gets really tricky. But I think they did a pretty good job with it. So, any hoot,